I have a question for you. As an American, do you care about your right to vote? Do you even care that you have easy access to voting? If you said yes to any of these questions, then let me tell you about current legislations and laws that may affect your right to vote in these coming years. Now, I assume that many of you can vividly remember the intense 2021 elections with Democratic nominee Joe Biden and Republican nominee Donald Trump, who at the time was running for his second term in office. Now, I assume that many of you could also remember that he had made many false statements against mail-in voting, mainly stating that they were fraudulent. As stated on his Twitter account, there is no way, zero, that mail-in ballot will be anything less than substantially fraudulent. Now, this will in turn cause many of his supporters to piggyback off of his ideas and try to take a stand against the quote-unquote mail-in voting fraud. And soon after this, Joe Biden would win the 2021 elections. But unfortunately, Trump would be refusing to give his power, which, as stated by the Department of Justice, would soon cause the storming of the Capitol riots on January 6, 2021. This would lead to many of his Trump supporters storming the Capitol in a fight against the quote-unquote voting frauds. Now, the reason that I bring this up is you might be wondering, what is the specific problem that I'm trying to bring up? Well, currently, there are many Republican-dominated states all over America that are currently trying to pass voter restrictive laws. Now, as stated by the Brookings Institute, on Monday, April 19th, 2021, the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, had signed a bill that would make voting more difficult and this law would not be just difficult for regular everyday people, but also for people of color. This bill would make voting more difficult via reduced ballot boxes, extra photo ID requirements, and most importantly, allowing state officials to circumvent the flow of the county officials if they do not like the outcomes of the votes. All of these bills that are being passed currently are targeting states that have major racial populations so that they can feel discouraged about voting. This will in turn allow the Republicans who are gerrymandering to change the flow of votes unfairly. Whether that be in the presidential level or even just on the mayoral level. These discouraging effects can also be seen in cities like Atlanta, where, as stated by the Brennan Center for Justice, that states who had already enacted strict voter laws have already seen that the racial turnout gap had grown. Now, this situation may give you the feelings that all is lost and we are completely hopeless in this situation, but this is completely wrong. In reality, there's a multitude of things that you could do. For example, you could sign a petition or partake in the act of the good old-fashioned protesting. As you can see, protesting has worked throughout all of America and for hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, it's how our country was even started, right? But another way that you could help is by showing your support of laws that do the exact opposite. For example, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And as stated by the Human Rights Campaign, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act is a proposed legislation that can expand and strengthen the government's abilities to respond to voting discrimination. This proposed legislation is beneficial for our whole country, as people all around America, especially people of color, will be having easier access to voting. Not only that, but showing your support for these laws can also help congressmen who are also in support of these laws, as they can help bolster their own firepower to show their colleagues that the right way is to actually enact these laws. Now, I want you to imagine how good this country could be by just having these laws passed instead of having these restrictive voting laws. Our country will have a chance to have a fair chance for both sides, no matter what side you choose politically, to have a good chance in choosing their own leaders, whether it be a Republican or Democratic leader, or maybe even something else. Now, isn't that something great that America could have? America is always about giving a fair shot, right? So why not help America and get a fair shot? Now, as you can already see that these restrictive voting laws can be very damaging to not only the citizens, but America. As stated before, these leaders of America are chosen by this process, voting. And by showing your support for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, this can help show your local congressmen and other politicians alike that you're in support of freeing up these restrictions. Not only that, but the good old-fashioned act of protesting can help as well. And as stated before, protesting has always worked no matter what. Even if it does it by just a little bit of a sliver, it can help get the attention of people who are against whatever you're trying to prove. Now, to further conclude, I provided why voting restriction laws can be damaging to America and to people of color, as it allows Republicans to gerrymander. I've also shown how it can be solved via the passing of acts like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and by showing how you can take a stand against these restrictive voting laws. Thank you for listening to my speech.